In the vast expanse of the Andromeda sector, the Galactic Concordat had maintained peace for over 10,000 cycles. The Concordat, an alliance of the most advanced civilizations, prided itself on identifying and guiding emerging species into the greater community of spacefaring races. Their methods were tested by time, their protocols precise, their judgment, until Earth had never failed. The first signs came from a routine survey mission. The Ix-Theri vessel, staffed by beings of pure energy, detected unusual radiation patterns from a seemingly unremarkable solar system. What caught their attention wasn't the atomic energy, primitive and crude by their standards, but the rate of advancement. In just over a century, the species had progressed from burning hydrocarbons to splitting atoms. Most curious, senior observers INRA noted in their report to the Concordat High Council, the speed of development exceeds our predictive models by a factor of 3. The High Council, in their crystalline chamber on Capital World Nexus Prime, dismissed the observation as a statistical anomaly. They had seen thousands of species rise and fall. Some burned bright and fast, only to destroy themselves in nuclear fire. Others reached for the stars too quickly and collapsed under their own ambition. But one voice spoke against the prevailing wisdom. Ancient scholar Valterra, last of the precursor race, felt something different about these humans. Their pattern is unique, she addressed the council, her holographic form shimmering with concern. They do not advance in the linear progression we expect. They adapt, they innovate in ways that defy our understanding. They fail, yet they learn from failure faster than any species we have encountered. The council chamber erupted in dismissive murmurs. Councillor Ken of the militant Drax Confederation rose to his full height, his armored exoskeleton gleaming. Scholar Valterra, with respect to your age and wisdom, you see threats where none exist. These humans barely maintain unity on their own world. Their technology is centuries behind our least advanced member species. It is not their current technology that concerns me, Valterra countered, her ancient eyes showing the weight of millennia. It is their potential. They possess a quality I have seen only once before, in the archives of my people's emergence. They have the spark of exponential growth. The Council's response was to establish minimal observation protocols, a decision that would later be recognized as their first critical mistake. For while they watched and debated, humanity continued its relentless march forward. Within decades, humans had not only mastered nuclear fusion, but had begun to grasp the principles of quantum mechanics. Their primitive computer systems evolved into quantum networks. Their first hesitant steps into their solar system became bold leaps across the void between planets. Valterra watched with growing alarm as humans solved problems that had taken other species centuries to unravel. They didn't follow the expected pathways of technological development. Where others would perfect one technology before moving to the next, humans pursued multiple paths simultaneously, creating unexpected synergies. They have achieved in 50 years what took the Drax Confederation 5 centuries, she reported to an increasingly uneasy council. Their understanding of quantum mechanics is unorthodox, but effective. They are approaching the threshold of faster-than-light travel, and they're doing it in ways our scientists hadn't considered. The Council finally stirred when human probes began detecting the subtle signatures of their observation posts. But rather than concern, there was amusement. The humans were like children discovering footprints in their garden, curious, but harmless. Let them find our markers, Councillor Ken declared. When they do reach the stars, they will understand their place in the hierarchy. All species do. But Valterra saw what the others missed. In their response to finding alien artifacts, humans didn't show the expected awe or fear. Instead, they exhibited something far more dangerous: determination. Each discovery spurred them to greater efforts, faster development, more innovations. The final warning came when humans reverse-engineered aspects of Concordat technology from mere traces left by observation drones. They took fragments of our passing presence, Valterra announced to the Council, and from these fragments, they are building their own path to the stars. not copying, improving. The council chambers fell silent at this, but still, they did not act. Their civilization had stood for too long, guided too many species, to be troubled by one aggressive young race. This was their second critical mistake. When humanity achieved faster than light travel, they didn't do it according to the known scientific principles. They hadn't followed the carefully documented paths that every other species had taken. Instead, they had found a way to bend space itself, creating stable wormholes that defied the Concordat's understanding of physics. The humans must be contained. Valterra made one final plea. Not through force. That window has passed, but through engagement. We must meet them as equals before they surpass us as superiors. But the Council, bound by tradition and pride, could not imagine a scenario where their technological superiority could be challenged. They voted to maintain their policy of passive observation, confident that when humanity finally reached the stars, they would naturally assume their place in the galactic hierarchy. They could not have been more wrong. As the first human ships began to probe beyond their solar system, Valterra retreated to her sanctuary among the rings of Nexus Prime. There, surrounded by the ancient archives of her people, she prepared for what she knew would come. Humanity wasn't just another species reaching for the stars. They were a force of nature about to collide with an immovable object. And in such collisions, she knew, it was often the immovable object that shattered. The first direct contact between humanity and the Concordat came not through careful diplomatic channels, but through an act of desperation. A damaged human exploration vessel, the Pathfinder, emerged from a wormhole in the midst of a Concordat patrol fleet. The humans, rather than showing fear or awe at the sight of the massive alien ships, immediately began broadcasting repair procedures to their vessel in all known frequencies, acting as if the patrol fleet was simply an audience to their own internal crisis. Admiral Voxcar of the Concordat Patrol watched in bewilderment as the human crew executed emergency protocols with practiced precision. These creatures, he noted in his report, treat near-death situations as if they were routine exercises. The humans fixed their ship, thanked the patrol for their patience, and requested astronomical data to calculate their return journey. The casual nature of their interaction with one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy caused ripples of unease throughout the Concordat hierarchy. But it was what happened next that truly shook the Concordat's foundations. The humans didn't just return home, they came back. Within months, dozens of human vessels began appearing at the edges of Concordat space, each equipped with improved versions of their wormhole drive. They weren't asking for permission to explore. They were already mapping trade routes. The Drax Confederation, ever militant, advocated for immediate military action. These humans must be taught their place, Counselor Ken demanded. Their advancement must be controlled, regulated according to our protocols. The Council, in their wisdom, opted for a middle path. They would send a delegation to Earth to formally introduce humanity to the galactic community, and more importantly, to establish the proper hierarchical relationships. The Concordat had done this thousands of times before. They would explain the rules, offer limited technological exchanges, and guide humanity into their designated position in the galactic order. The delegation arrived at Earth with all the pomp and ceremony that 10,000 years of tradition demanded. They were met instead by a human diplomatic corps that had already compiled extensive data on Concordat species, culture, and technology, gathered through their own exploration and observation. "We've been looking forward to this meeting," the human ambassador stated, displaying holographic maps of Concordat space more detailed than what the delegation had brought. "We have some proposals for technological exchange that we believe will benefit both our civilizations." The delegation's leader, High Minister Zelton, nearly broke protocol in shock. These humans weren't acting like a newly contacted species should. They weren't supposed to have proposals. They weren't supposed to have detailed maps. They definitely weren't supposed to be suggesting modifications to Concordat technology. The breaking point came during the technological exchange presentations. The humans weren't interested in the carefully prepared package of appropriate technologies the Concordat had brought. Instead, they began suggesting improvements to Concordat systems, improvements that their scientists had already theoretically worked out. Your quantum communication network, a human scientist casually mentioned, could be enhanced by incorporating our wormhole principles. We've developed a prototype that reduces signal delay to zero, regardless of distance. The delegation reported back to the Council in near panic. These humans weren't following any known pattern of species development. They weren't asking for help. They were offering it. Worse, their offers were legitimate. Human theoretical science had already surpassed several areas of Concordat practical application. Valterra, watching from her sanctuary, saw the inevitable approaching. The humans have achieved in months of contact what other species take decades to comprehend, she warned. They are not rising to meet our level. They are surpassing it. The Council's response was swift and, in their view, decisive. They would isolate human space, cutting them off from further contact until they learned to accept Concordat authority. Military vessels were deployed, trade routes were closed, and diplomatic channels were severed. But the humans didn't react as expected. They didn't protest. They didn't beg for reconciliation. Instead, they turned their focus inward, accelerating their development with an intensity that alarmed even Valterra. When the Drax Confederation attempted to enforce a blockade of human space, they discovered their quarantine fleet was useless. Human ships simply opened wormholes beyond the blockade lines, completely ignoring the carefully positioned Drax vessels. When the Drax attempted to pursue, they found their engines couldn't match the humans' new propulsion systems. The humans had taken the few months of contact with the Concordat and used them to revolutionize their technology. They hadn't just learned from the alien civilization, they had improved upon everything they'd seen. This cannot be allowed to continue, Councillor Ken declared to an emergency session of the Council. The humans must be contained, by force if necessary. They threaten the very foundation of galactic order. The Council, for the first time in thousands of years, found themselves facing a species that didn't fit into their carefully structured hierarchy. The humans weren't rebelling against the system. They were ignoring it entirely, charting their own course among the stars. The stage was set for conflict. The Concordat, bound by millennia of tradition and superiority, could not allow this challenge to their authority to continue. The humans, driven by their insatiable curiosity and determination, would not accept artificial limitations on their advancement. Something had to break, and when it did, the galaxy would never be the same. The first shots of the war weren't fired by the Concordat's massive battleships or by human vessels. They came from a small, automated research station on the edge of human space. The station, detecting unusual energy signatures from approaching Drax warships, activated its defensive protocols. Within moments, the entire Drax battle group found their systems compromised by what they would later describe as impossibly adaptive computer code. The humans called it ARIA, Autonomous Response Intelligence Algorithm. It wasn't just a defense system. It was humanity's answer to the question of how to fight a technologically superior force. The AI didn't just react to threats. It learned from them, adapted to them, and turned them back on their originators. The Drax fleet, pride of the Concordat military, retreated in disarray. Their own weapons had been turned against them by an automated station they had intended to destroy. The message was clear. Humanity had been preparing for this confrontation. We didn't want this conflict, the human diplomatic corps broadcast across all Concordat frequencies. But we've been ready for it since we first looked to the stars. The Council, for the first time in its long history, faced a species that had anticipated their every move. The humans hadn't just developed technology, they had developed it specifically to counter Concordat advantages. Valterra, watching from her sanctuary, saw patterns that terrified even her ancient perspective. They're not just fighting the Concordat, she reported to her private archives. They're systematically dismantling our technological advantages. Each encounter teaches them more about our capabilities, and they adapt faster than we can respond. The Concordat's response was to launch a full-scale military operation. Multiple battle fleets converged on human space, expecting to overwhelm Earth's defenses through sheer numbers. What they found instead was an empty void. The human worlds had vanished, shielded by technology that bent light and space around entire planets. "They've made their worlds invisible," reported Admiral Voxcar, his voice tinged with disbelief. "Not through traditional cloaking technology, but by folding space itself around their systems." But the humans weren't just hiding. From these hidden worlds, they launched counterstrikes that demonstrated warfare unlike anything the Concordat had ever encountered. Human ships would appear from artificial wormholes directly inside Concordat formation, release swarms of autonomous drones that adapted to any countermeasures, then vanish before any response could be mounted. The Concordat's military doctrine, refined over thousands of years, proved useless against human tactics. Where the Concordat relied on overwhelming force, the humans used precision strikes. Where the Concordat deployed massive battle fleets, the humans used small, highly adaptive task forces. Most disturbing to the Concordat leadership was humanity's rate of technological advancement during the conflict. Each engagement seemed to face new human technologies, new strategies, new ways of turning Concordat strengths into weaknesses. "They're not just fighting us," Counselor Ken observed during an emergency session. "They're using each battle as a laboratory, learning and improving with every encounter." The humans had turned the entire conflict into an accelerated evolution of their military capabilities. Every Concordat victory came at the cost of revealing more of their technology and tactics to human observation. Every defeat provided the humans with new data to analyze and adapt to. Valterra, in what would be her final address to the Council, tried one last time to make them understand. "The humans don't think like us," she explained. "Where we see combat as a means to victory, they see it as a path to understanding. Each battle teaches them more about us than we learn about them. They're not just fighting this war, they're solving it, like one of their scientific problems." The turning point came when human forces demonstrated their mastery of quantum entanglement technology. The Concordat had used quantum communications for millennia, but the humans had taken the concept further than anyone had thought possible. They didn't just communicate through quantum channels. They had learned to manipulate quantum states on a massive scale. Entire Concordat fleets found their quantum-based systems failing as humans manipulated the very fabric of space-time around them. Ships that relied on quantum navigation were suddenly blind. Communications networks that had been considered unbreakable were shattered. "They've weaponized physics itself," one Concordat scientist reported in horror. "They're not just using technology. They're rewriting the rules of how it works." The Council, faced with this unprecedented situation, began to fracture. Some members advocated for seeking peace while the Concordat still had strength to negotiate. Others, led by the Drax Confederation, pushed for committing even more forces to the conflict. But the humans weren't interested in the Council's internal debates. They had already moved beyond simple military victory. Each engagement, each technological exchange, was building towards something larger, something that would reshape the galaxy in ways the Concordat had never imagined. The war had become more than a conflict between species. It was a clash between two fundamentally different approaches to existence. The Concordat's rigid hierarchy and carefully controlled progress against humanity's adaptive, explosive growth and innovation. And in this clash, the galaxy was about to learn which approach would prevail. The transformation began not with a massive battle or a decisive military victory, but with a message. A single transmission, broadcast simultaneously across every quantum frequency the Concordat used, and even some they didn't know existed. The message was simple: "We would rather create than destroy. Let us show you why." What followed stunned the Concordat leadership. The humans began broadcasting technical specifications for technologies they had developed, not weapons or military systems, but innovations in medicine, environmental restoration, and faster-than-light travel. technologies that could benefit all species, freely shared. This is a trick, Councillor Ken declared to the increasingly divided council, a ploy to weaken our resolve. But even as he spoke, Concordat scientists were verifying the human technologies. Not only did they work, but they represented advances that could solve problems that had plagued Concordat species for generations. The first major defection came from the HFY, the energy beings who had first discovered Earth. They announced their withdrawal from the Concordat military alliance, citing the potential benefits of human medical technology in treating a degenerative condition that had been slowly killing their species. "We cannot ignore the possibility of salvation," the HFY representative announced, merely to maintain an outdated hierarchy. The humans hadn't just developed weapons to fight the Concordat. They had been working on solutions to the problems of every major species they had encountered. They had studied their opponents not just as enemies, but as potential allies. Valterra's successor, young scholar Renthi, understood the implications first. "They're not trying to defeat us," she explained to the council. "They're trying to transform us. Every technology they're sharing requires cooperation between species to implement effectively. They're building connections that transcend our traditional power structures." The human strategy became clear. Rather than destroying the Concordat, they were offering an alternative. Their technologies weren't designed to work in isolation. They required the unique abilities and knowledge of multiple species to reach their full potential. The Drax Confederation found their quantum crystalline armor, once their greatest military advantage, could be adapted using human principles to heal their dying world's atmosphere. The Zentari, masters of biotechnology, discovered human genetic algorithms could solve problems they had struggled with for centuries. More species began breaking away from the Concordat's military coalition, not to ally with humans, but to pursue the possibilities their technologies offered. The humans had turned the conflict into a revolution, not through force, but through innovation. "They understand something we forgot," scholar Renthi observed. "True power doesn't come from controlling others, but from enabling them to grow." The council watched helplessly as their carefully maintained hierarchy crumbled. The humans hadn't needed to destroy their enemy's military might. They had simply made it irrelevant. Species that had been locked in competition for millennia found themselves working together, combining their unique perspectives with human innovations to solve problems neither could have tackled alone. But the most shocking development came when human scientists, working with defected Concordat researchers, announced a breakthrough in dimensional physics. They had found a way to access higher dimensions, opening up entirely new frontiers for exploration and development. "This is what we've been trying to show you," the Human Scientific Council announced. "The galaxy is too vast, its mysteries too deep, for any one species to explore alone. We need each other, not in a hierarchy, but in a true partnership." The remaining hardliners in the Concordat, led by Councillor Ken, prepared for one final, massive military push. But they found their own forces reluctant to fight. The humans had demonstrated a path forward that didn't require submission or dominance. "Look at what they've achieved in mere decades," a Drax commander told his troops. "Not by following the old ways, but by daring to imagine new ones. Why should we sacrifice ourselves to prevent that?" The tide hadn't turned through military might or political maneuvering. It had turned because humanity had offered something the galaxy didn't know it needed, a future where advancement came through cooperation rather than competition, where species could retain their uniqueness while working together toward common goals. The old order was crumbling, but something new and unprecedented was taking its place. The galaxy was transforming, and at its heart was a species that had refused to accept limitations, refused to submit to hierarchy, and insisted that the stars belonged to everyone. The war was ending, not with the bang of battle, but with the quiet revolution of ideas. And in this revolution, humanity had proven that their greatest weapon wasn't their technology or their adaptability. It was their vision of what the galaxy could become. The final meeting of the old Concordat Council took place exactly 1 Earth year after the humans shared their technological innovations. The crystalline chamber, once a symbol of unchanging power, now seemed like a relic of a bygone era. Only a handful of the original council members remained, their faces bearing the weight of profound change. The human representatives attended not as supplicants or conquerors, but as architects of a new galactic order. They had brought with them delegates from every species that had embraced their vision of cooperation, former enemies now united in common purpose. "We stand at a crossroads," began the human ambassador, her words translated simultaneously in hundreds of languages. Not to replace one hierarchy with another, but to forge something entirely new. A galaxy where advancement comes not from competition, but from collaboration. The proof of her words was evident in the unprecedented achievements of the past year. The combined efforts of human quantum physicists and X-theory energy manipulators had revolutionized space travel. Drax warriors, once dedicated to conquest, now led joint expeditions into unexplored regions, their martial prowess turned to protection and discovery. Even the most dramatic example of this new cooperation stood in orbit above them. The first dimensional gateway. Built through the combined efforts of 12 different species, each contributing unique insights and abilities, it represented possibilities that no single civilization could have achieved alone. "We were wrong," admitted the last High Minister of the Concordat, his ancient voice carrying the wisdom of painful experience. "We saw the galaxy as a ladder to be climbed, when it was always meant to be a web of connections. The humans had proved something that the Concordat had never considered possible, that true power came not from controlling advancement, but from unleashing it. Every species that had joined their coalition had discovered capabilities they never knew they possessed, simply because they were finally free to explore them." Scholar Renethy, speaking from the same position, where Valterra had once warned of human potential, now documented a transformation unlike anything in galactic history. "They showed us that our differences were not obstacles to be overcome, but strengths to be combined. Each species brings unique perspectives, unique abilities, unique ways of seeing the universe." The new Galactic Charter, drafted jointly by all participating species, established principles that would have been unthinkable under the old order. Knowledge would be shared freely. Advancement would be pursued collectively. Each species would maintain its sovereignty while contributing to common goals. But perhaps most revolutionary was the establishment of the Innovation Commons, a shared space where scientists, philosophers, and creators from all species could collaborate freely. The humans had shown that the greatest breakthroughs came not from careful control of knowledge, but from its free exchange. "We look to the stars and see not boundaries, but bridges," the human ambassador continued. "Not territories to be conquered, but mysteries to be solved together." The old council chamber, symbol of hierarchical power for 10,000 years, was transformed into the first galactic exchange, a place where all species could meet as equals, share ideas, and work toward common goals. As the new charter was ratified, the former council members watched their carefully maintained order dissolve not into chaos as they had feared, but into something far more dynamic and alive. The humans had not destroyed the galaxy's civilization. They had catalyzed its evolution. "They were never the threat we feared," reflected Scholar Renethy in her final report. "They were the change we needed. In trying to contain them, we almost contained ourselves." The humans, for their part, seemed almost surprised by the magnitude of what they had achieved. They had come to the stars prepared for war, but had won something far greater, a future where the combined potential of all species could finally be realized. As the first projects of the new order began to take shape, as joint expeditions ventured into unexplored space, as shared technologies solved problems that had once seemed insurmountable, the galaxy learned the final lesson of humanity's rise. True strength lies not in the power to dominate, but in the wisdom to cooperate. The warning about humanity that the Concordat had ignored proved true, but not in the way anyone had expected. The humans had indeed changed everything, not through conquest or destruction, but by showing the galaxy a better way forward. And as the first ships passed through the dimensional gateway, Crewed by members of a dozen different species working in harmony, the stars themselves seem to shine brighter, illuminating not just space, but the infinite possibilities that lay ahead.